So, what are my political views? The truth is, I never really had political views. Insofar as I used to have political debates at all, it would always be whatever was going to trigger the person in front of me. So I would shapeshift depending on what I thought was going to push their buttons. So in the case where I was going to debate my sister, who's a bisexual feminist, I was going to be a homophobic conservative. And I was sufficiently disagreeable to not really mind hurting her, because obviously it is going to hurt people who take their identities and their views very seriously, and it does have it does change their direct affect from moment to moment. But I didn't really care about that. I cared about having fun and discovering just how predictable people were. And so therefore I could classify people into particular boxes. I could see, okay, I think he's going to react in this way, I think they're going to say this and this, and I would test this against real people. And so that might seem a bit sociopathic, but that's what I would do. I would go and not have real views because I didn't, so I could just morph into whatever view was convenient for the purpose of fun. So if I was going to debate or have a conversation with my Midwestern, white, conservative old teacher, I was going to be a complete progressive liberal. And I didn't really mind because I really had no views. Insofar as I had views, they would be best described as a technocrat. So I believe that clearly, because people are so predictable and clearly not acting rationally, based on my experiences, that which should be making decisions should be that pure silicon extract of our soul known as artificial intelligence. Of course, I was being just pretty naive that we could actually, just delegate all our choices to something else in this way, because obviously we would have to program it. We would have to solve the control problem, which was something that I was not thinking about when I was 16. I just had this notion that it just makes far more sense to have something which is actually taking data in and trying to act on it, as opposed to people who are very clearly reacting to buttons being pressed. So, given that, what are my views today? Well, with regards to politics at large, I think it's largely a waste of time to even hold any position, because you can't really pull any levers. You're not going to make any difference no matter what view you hold. You could be the most informed person on politics, and if you're not going to pull any levers, it's a complete waste of time. And it is also the case that the thing that actually drives history is technology. It's advances in technology and things that completely change our linguistic models of reality, it's the mimetic landscape at large, and not just the specifics of policy, I think are what are more important. So, given that, what are my views in regards to, say, libertarianism versus control, versus having something which is planned and therefore restricting of individual freedoms? Well, here, as you could have guessed, given that I said I was more leaning towards a technocrat, unlike a lot of people who are intelligent and far more intelligent than me, who are libertarian, I never felt that it was inherently valuable to hold libertarian values, because I thought that it was clearly the case from a game theoretic perspective that when you plan routes, a central authority plans routes, you're going to have a better outcome than when you have anarchy, when there is a price to anarchy. So if people are going to act selfishly, there's going to be a cost to that, both to themselves and to others. It's going to be more inefficient than if you planned out, if you had an overseer, a philosopher king, better yet, a god king, overseeing it all and telling you what to do. It's better for everyone. Everyone gets where they want to go faster. So that's the intuitive rationale why I don't to this day inherently value the idea of liberty. Now, you could argue that the way to get to such an agent that can actually view that is through inner strife and conflict in its own mind. So there are individual subcomponents within the mind of this ascending God King that are themselves in conflict, and that conflict is the only ultimate way to attain intelligence. And so this would go along with Karl Popper's idea of constant criticism, that you shouldn't just take an idea, elevate it, and replicate it, but that it's a gradual process of constant criticism that never ends. And therefore, that would, in some sense, be a defense of individualism, that there should always be this competitive, creative process of individuality. And then it just becomes a matter of degree. To what degree are you comfortable with control, with controlling agents who inflict upon the rights of the made-up rights of others, cognitive freedoms? And so I think I'm sympathetic to people who suffered under systematizing agents who were, are you comfortable with control, with controlling agents who inflict upon the rights of the made-up rights of others, cognitive freedoms? And so I think I'm sympathetic to people's minds, which were smarter, were trapped in a dumber system. They suffered because of it, and then they become libertarians, and they do a lot of shilling for this idea, and a lot of selective reasoning. And of course, I'm not going to defend socialism as has been practiced by humans, which again is a dumb system that constrains possibly more intelligent results that would arise from a capitalistic, free society in which you have a little more freedom to move, a little more freedom to fail, and to do things, to compete. So in that regard, I think it's a matter of sustaining freedom somewhere. So I think we should always have a backup of freedom somewhere. But I don't think we should perpetually enforce this sort of ethos of anarchy, of I live for myself, I stand for myself, for one reason, because I'm not a closed individualist. So I think it's simply a confusion of myself. In other words, I believe that physicalism implies that this is a one-player game. It's a single-player game. It's cleverly set up to feel like a multiplayer, so from each indexical location, I can't tell that it is actually myself on the other side. So Longinus is piercing the ribs of the Christ every time. It's himself on the other side. It's us everywhere. It's me on the other side everywhere. But from each location, I can't tell. And this is just implied by physicalism, because otherwise it would be a miracle. The reason I'm not a libertarian has to do with measuring the price of anarchy. So the price of anarchy is a concept in economics and game theory. And it measures the efficiency of a system and how that degrades based on the selfish behavior of the agents embedded within that system. So it's a general notion that could be extended to a wide variety of systems and different notions of efficiency. So you could consider a system in which you have roads, you have people trying to get somewhere, and you measure efficiency based on the average time that it takes any given agent to get to its destination. In which case, you would want to reduce the average time for each agent to get to their destination. And it is often the case that, as you might suspect, in a centralized solution where you have a central authority who's right here overseeing with his, big glasses from the heavens, what is the best possible path for this guy? What's the best possible path for this guy? What's the best possible guy for this guy? They all get there faster. Whereas if everyone operates on their own choice, on their own free will, they're probably all going to go for the fastest route and therefore jam the fastest route. So this is the price of anarchy. You take the ratio over what occurs when you have a centralized situation, whereas when you have a decentralized situation in which everyone chooses their own fate. And sadly, it is often the case that it is better to have a centralized solution. Of course, it becomes a problem when you have a dummy in power. When you have a dummy holding power over intelligent agents, and that's often the case. That is often the case. That was the case with socialism, suppressing the freedom of creativity and competition and intelligence that was there to be exploited by humanity itself in its own internal fightings and self-ascent towards greatness. It is also the case that a lot of intelligent people become shills for libertarianism because they have suffered under systematizing agents that have taken control over their minds for too long. So when your mind is embedded within a system that is dumber than you, you suffer. This happens to a lot of very smart people in school. It happens to dumb people because they can't keep up, but it also happens to smart people who are whose minds are being constrained in a dumb way. And this happens in jobs. A lot of jobs are arbitrary, are dumb. You're doing things which are not the best way, but you have to do it. And that's the problem. So the problem is not authority itself, the idea of that you should always just govern yourself. The problem is having the right authority, the right planning. It's always the case about the right planning. And this is especially so if you are aware of proper physicalism, in which case you will not distinguish between all of your different indexical presence as being different beings, fundamentally, as being different souls. I am no more different to whoever is watching this video than I am to whoever bears my name 5 years down the line. I equally cannot know what he is feeling, sensing, seeing, hearing, whatever, as I can know what you are feeling, seeing, sensing, whatever. But I cannot be solipsistic in regard to either one because I know that physically there is no crisp way to define a closed individual. So there's no way to define a closed individual who is separate, who has a different fundamental being and soul. This is a metaphysical fantasy that underlies a lot of our thinking. It obviously underlies our criminal justice system, but it goes deeper. It goes down into your psyche where you cannot look at another person and realize that fundamentally you are them. The experience is one. So it's not the same thoughts, it's not the same memories, it's not the same sphere of awareness, but from each location you can't tell that you're the other. So this doesn't necessarily imply that you have to cooperate with everyone. In fact, if you, from your indexical present, are, someone who pushes themselves and who, fights yourself and punishes yourself even. You're a masochist. You like violence against yourself. Maybe being an open individualist gives you even more freedom that you would have otherwise felt to hurt others, right? Because you no longer perceive them as others. You realize that it is you on the other side too. And so open individualism doesn't necessarily mean blind cooperation with everything. It does not imply that. But it does give you perspective. It gives you perspective when considering the price of anarchy.